Welcome to the Great Health, Big Wealth Podcast, Season 2, where vibrant wellness meets boundless wealth that extends far beyond your bank account. I'm your host, Hannah Davis. In Season 2, we're diving deep into the heart of vibrant wellness, exploring profound connections between mind, body, and soul. Get ready to unlock the secrets to a life filled with vitality, resilience, and joy as I interview experts in the field of health, wealth, and personal development. The Great Health, Big Wealth Podcast is your go-to source for motivation, education, and a whole lot of positive vibes. So grab your favorite smoothie, find a cozy spot, and let's embark together on this epic quest for vibrant wellness and boundless wealth. Hi guys, today I'm so excited to be with you interviewing Sarah Bragg. Sarah Bragg is a popular podcast host, communicator, and author. You can find her hosting the podcast Surviving Sarah. She also created, produced, and hosted the first 2 seasons of the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. She's also the author of A Mother's Guide to Raising Herself and Is Everyone Happier Than Me? Sarah is a master of brewing coffee and helping others survive well right where they are. Sarah, hey, how are you?
Hi, friend. I'm just so happy to be here
on the show.
I know.
I'm like nervous to interview you because you're kind of a podcast queen.
I was gonna say it's because we're like real life friends. Sometimes I think that's harder to interview people that you're like already like really friends with.
Maybe. I don't know. That doesn't make me nervous because I feel like
that's just me. Okay.
I feel like I might know everything you're gonna say. No, but guys, we originally met because I was a guest on your podcast, Surviving Sarah.
Yes, you were my 100th episode guest way back when. That was a long time ago too.
I know. You know, I meant to go back and listen to it because I wanted to see what crazy things I said that I don't agree with anymore.
Oh, isn't that the way it goes?
But I don't know. Maybe it was a good one.
I know. I can't remember. That was so long ago. But I'm like, anything I wrote like years ago, I'm like, let's just burn it and start new. Like I feel that like no telling what I said years ago and if it still holds up. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm already setting myself as a great expert here, but
you know what? We're all experts, really. We just have to dig deep. But hey, I want to jump right in. I want to know the secret to brewing that perfect cup of coffee.
Gosh. Well, first of all, I'm really obsessed with my Bunn coffee maker because it makes it in 3 minutes. And that's really what I'm about, efficiency, and I need it now. So that's really what it is. I mean, I'm sure that there's actual experts out there about coffee that are rolling their eyes at me as I'm speaking, but I just love it so much.
Is that a pod?
No, it's like a regular coffee maker, but it's the BUNN brand. You know, like restaurants use it. Like it just brews it so fast. And then my favorite coffee comes straight from Hawaii. It's the Lion brand, and it's just so delicious. So
where do you get it from? Do you have to
order it straight from their website, Lion Coffee, like the animal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Might have to try it. But you have to measure out how much. See, I think that there's an art in that. I haven't quite figured that out.
I know. And I get kind of like, superstitious is not the right word. It's what is it where you're just like, I have my certain measurer, like, and if I don't measure it with that thing, it's all off.
Yeah. I went the Nespresso route because I'm just not consistent. I can't make a consistent cup of coffee.
Gosh, I wish I don't love the Nespresso route. I want to, like deep down in my heart, I want to, and I just don't. Yeah.
All right.
I know.
Okay, so like I said, we met first when I was a guest on your podcast. You were living in Atlanta or outside of Atlanta at that time. Then you moved back to Cleveland, near where your family is. And we reconnected when you came into my studio. You trained with me. We played tennis together.
Yes. Which I can't wait for spring to hit so we get back playing together.
I know we need to get back outside. I can't believe the people that will play in this cold weather.
Yeah. I mean, I played this week twice and I had like 4 layers on. And you know, you just keep taking layers off as you go. But
Yeah.
it was cold.
Yeah.
It was real cold.
I know. So I wanted to talk with you mostly today about your new book, Is Everyone Happier Than Me? Awesome topic, number one.
Yeah.
So
good title. We're all wondering that one.
listen, and it releases what, March 19th? Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a quick synopsis of the book, and who is this book for?
Yeah. Well, I feel like so many of us in this, I don't know, middle parts of life, you know, you're no longer in your like early 20s where you're like so bright eyed and bushy tailed and rose colored glasses. And you're like, I'm going to conquer the world. You've lived a little bit of life and faced some things that weren't quite as easy or as you expected it to go.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's those of us who are just in that middle season and going, okay, well, is this it? Or like, is this everything I thought the way it was supposed to be is not? So now what? Like when you just find yourself constantly asking questions like that. Like for me, like my best time to think about these things is at 3 a.m. I hate it that I think about them at 3 a.m., that I'll wake up and I'll start running through this like Rolodex of questions and fears and like anxiety and is everyone happier than me? And then I just think about it. And I think about the things that I saw or another things like, does anybody like me? And I think about, you know, you replay a conversation in your head with a friend and you're like, why did I say that? Like, what? Do you think they like me? Like, is this, you know? So I think it's for all of us who are in that middle season and you're just, I don't know, kind of feeling like, well, now what? Like, this was life. Like, but this is kind of what it is. I'm just not sure what to do with it. So every chapter is a different question like that I find myself asking in this season and really sort of searching for that sense of connection, which, you know, with happiness, it's just like any other feeling. Is no feeling is final and it's going to come and it's going to go. But I think at the heart of all of that is we're just looking for connection with ourselves, connection with others. And so a lot of those questions that we're asking, I think really come down to figuring out how to be more connected.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you mentioned in the book that you kind of wrote this book in real time. Like these are kind of your current struggles. And I think that is very, very interesting. And what was that process like? Was that challenging? You know, the previous book you wrote, that's kind of post experience, right? And you're writing this in real time. What was that like as a writer?
The last book, A Mother's Guide to Raising Herself, I feel like I had like more than 10 years of just kind of processing through things, learning things, growing in areas. And this book was kind of like, well, I'm no expert in this. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. And so it really felt a little raw and a little vulnerable. The topics, my therapist at one point, she was like, how are you feeling about the book? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, well, tell me again what you're writing. And I kind of started talking about, she's, oh, well, no wonder. You're basically a therapy session. You're just putting out into a book for everyone to read. Right. She's like, no wonder you're feeling a little like nervous. But I think it's one of those where I think so much of us, especially looking online, everybody seems to have it all figured out. Yeah. And I think actually most of us just don't have anything figured out. We're just trying to make it today. We're trying to figure out this one thing in front of us. And so I really felt like I was writing from that place of saying, I think we're kind of in the same situation. Here's what I'm trying. Here's what I'm sort of figuring out. Maybe it'll work for you. And that's sort of, it's really, I'm a guide through this, but I'm also just walking it
going
with
through
you.
This. Yeah. It definitely made it just so relatable. And I love that. You mentioned social media, like looking on social media, and like you said, everyone kind of seems to have it together, and how your experience with social media just began to turn so negative and it absolutely wasn't helping you. So you decided to take some time off of social media, which I think is a great idea for most of us. You said you started doing things with that time away from social, like more productive things. You like
Yeah.
learn to play the ukulele.
I know, right? I know.
mean,
I love music, and I was like, I played the piano like all my growing up years, like all through high school. Like my dream was like, I'm going to be Miss America one day, and I'm going to kill it in that talent portion. I may not have the other portions, but I'm going to kill it in interview and in talent. I'm going to take home the victory. Well, anyways, like that clearly never came to fruition, but I've always just been musical. And so like I learned the guitar when I was early 20s, and I was like, I'm just going to try the ukulele. My daughter had one, and I just was like, Googling, how to play and watching YouTube videos and learning Billie Eilish songs. And it just was like, oh, you can do something else with the amount of time that I was spending scrolling social media.
Isn't that the truth?
I know.
So wait, did it stick? Are you still playing the ukulele?
I'm not still playing. Clearly, I'm like, okay, great. I solved that. Check. Let me move on to the next thing. Well, now it's like, I play tennis now all the time. So I'm like, I just keep trying to pick up. And that's the thing. I feel like I started going back to things that I loved as an adolescent.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as adults, we don't think that those things that we loved and that lit us up as kids and adolescents still have a place in our lives as adults. Like we sort of grew up out of it. And I think that when you have more time on your hands, when you step away from like time sucks, like, scrolling, you can kind of go, oh, what did I used to love when I was growing up? Well, clearly I used to love music, and I used to love playing tennis. And now it's sort of, okay, let's fill up my schedule or my time with those kind of things again.
Right. Yeah. You played tennis in college.
Right.
You got a scholarship.
Yes.
And in the book, you say after college, you hung up the racket. Yeah. You stepped away. Why do you think you did that? I mean, you loved it. Were you burnt out? Or
I was burnt out. And it's so interesting because now I can see those kind of cycles in my life with work, because tennis was my job when I was growing up. That's what got me to college. That paid my bills in college. And I can see where I just got so burnt out, just like I did in different seasons of my adult life with work. And I think, I am such a competitive person, but I just really lost the love of the game because I was so driven by needing to win. Again, it was my job, like you had to win. It was based on, are you going to get to play? Are you going to have a job next semester if you're not performing? So I just think I'm sad that I let it go that long. 20 years is a little long to let something go, but and you were really part of like coming back to it. Like my daughter started playing, and then I guess we were probably talking about it, and you're like, I'm starting to play tennis, and we were like, let's play, let's do it.
So guys, if you don't know, I started playing tennis at 39. I'm still 39. No, I guess I would have been 38.
You were 38.
I was 38, and I've been playing for a little over a year, and I've devoted, a lot.
You're so good too. You're doing so great.
Well, because I'm taking lessons. I take lessons
but you're putting
every
in the time.
Single week. Yes, I've decided, I wanted to do something that was just for me, just creative. I want to kind of get into that because what you said in the book about creativity, for me, there is a creativity to learning a new sport.
Absolutely.
And tennis, man, tennis is very therapeutic. The sound of it, the movement of it, the pace has been very like therapeutic for me. I've been able to check out of stress and into zoning into the here and now. And I think that
you have to only think about this thing that I'm doing.
Yes. Yeah.
I can catch my mind. I don't know if you're like this. I can catch my mind wandering a little bit at times. Mm-hmm. And then I realize I'm like, gosh, I'm not even hitting it right because I'm just like checked out. I've got to dial it back in and think about what am I doing?
Yeah, I think it's still too new for me to let myself go there. Like you have tennis a little bit more in your muscle memory because you did play it for so many years.
Right.
I think for me, I'm still like the constant checklist in my brain is that technique. So I keep like going So I hope I never lose that, because
Yeah.
I just love that hour or hour and a half that I play where I just completely am not tuned into anything else but the court.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Oh, and you're so right. It's so creative. It's problem solving, and which is a creative activity.
Yes.
All of
Yeah.
that. The amount of energy that takes to learn something new takes a lot of creative energy.
Yeah. So you talk in your book about tapping into creativity to combat comparison,
Yeah.
because one thing about social media or just even looking at our friends in the neighborhood, even we tend to compare what they have against what we have, what they can do versus what we are able to do, and your experience of tapping into creativity to fill your bucket is a very powerful tool for
Yeah.
just combating that comparison
Yeah.
uh,
I never thought
issue.
about that until I read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. And she
Mm,
has a whole chapter on letting go of comparison. And she was the first person that I ever heard talk about sort of this antidote to comparison is creativity. And I was always like,
mm,
huh? Like what?
mm-hmm.
Like this is a straight, like I would have thought you just would have been like, just stop comparing. That's what you do. Like it's just human. Like you're going to naturally compare
Right.
things, right? That's just
Mm-hmm.
how our brains work. But like with creativity, that is your unique expression. That is something that is unique to you. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things where you're actually can't compare, because comparison requires you to look at two like things.
Yeah.
So you might be able to go, well, like we're looking on social media and well, Hannah and I are both females. Okay, I guess we could compare because we're both females, but there's still a lot more like me, and you know this from being a trainer, me comparing myself to you as like in
Right.
the regards of training is probably not the right comparison. We're
Right.
not on equal footing in any way in that regard. And so that's not the right way to do that. So with creativity, you go, well, my unique expression is different than your unique expression. So really, there's
Mm-hmm.
no comparison. We
Mm-hmm.
get caught up in things being, oh, everybody's seeing that as flashier or that is shinier. When really it's like, oh, well, good for them that they've got something that people are
Yeah.
thinking is shiny, but it doesn't negate my own creative work. And
It doesn't take
so,
away my shiny. Like I can
correct.
have my own shiny.
Exactly. And so because it's your unique expression, just like when my daughters when they were little and they would, draw their hand print for like a turkey at Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't look at them and go, well, Hannah's turkey looks a whole lot better. Like, it just, you wouldn't think to do that. It's just their little creative
You weren't
expression.
like listen, you traced your hand a little bit
Right.
better than
Right.
Rory did.
Right.
That
So, we're going to give her the cookie, not you. So,
Oh
it's
my
it's like, so going back to what creativity looked like just for the sake of creating stuff was
mm-hmm.
helpful for me. Like to remind myself that I have this, we're just wired for creativity. This is my unique expression. So whether it's good, I'm looking up here because my guitar and ukulele hang right here beside me.
Yeah.
So whether it's playing an instrument or, learning something new like you're doing with tennis, or even reading books or drawing, anything, cooking, like it's all creative expression. And it's going, the more we can do that just lets us channel that energy into
Mm-hmm.
creativity, it lessens the constant comparison tap at our like tap tap tap, like you need to compare. I think
Yeah.
that's what creativity can do.
And what I hear you saying is really like broadening the definition of creativity. I think a lot of people would describe themselves as like not a like, well, I'm just not a creative person. But I
Yes.
really like how you're broadening the definition of what creativity is. I think
Oh yeah.
that's that's good stuff.
Yeah, because it's kind of like you only think, well, I don't draw or I don't paint or I don't write, and we've really just narrowed it down when there's just, you're creative. Like the fact that you are a created being, like there's
Yeah.
creativity everywhere. Like, so
Yeah.
why wouldn't you be creative?
Yeah. When we do get creative and we try to share our creativity, that's a very vulnerable thing to do. Are there any tactics that you use to like share uninhibited? I mean, you had to do that obviously writing this book. I think about how vulnerable you had to be to share, especially in a current state. So what kind of tactics do you use to be more vulnerable?
I feel like if I can get myself into sort of a vacuum, when you feel that like creative inspiration hit for me in regards to writing, so just in that specific thing, I get so energized by it, by even being vulnerable. I just imagine like it's just coming out. So I'm like, okay, this is great. Like, even when I first finished the book and I turned it in, I was like, this is great. I feel great about this.
Yeah.
And then like the moment I like realized someone else was going to read it, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this anymore. Like, so it immediately can kind of tip back. But I feel like if I can stay in that frame of like for instance, my favorite book on creativity is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And every time I write a book, I reread it while I'm having to do this. And she talked about this one part was so helpful this time because she was like, whatever your creativity is, whether what you're inspired to do, doesn't have to change the world. It doesn't have to be important, and it doesn't have to change the world. And something about taking that pressure off, so it helps me to be vulnerable, to show up. It doesn't have to change the world. Now, I hope it's helpful to someone who's reading it, but it doesn't have to change the world. So that helps me to just follow inspiration, just follow your creativity, and let's just see where it goes. And then, but the other part of it is the scary part of what people will think. And those are the things that, that to me, I have to combat shame, I guess, in that, like fact check things, go through that process, pay attention to myself. Like if I feel that like sense of shame rising up physically in my body and go, okay, what am I worried about? Is it true? If they do say this thing, is that going to be like devastating to me, or are we going to be able to figure this out? But in the world of social media, I think the biggest thing that always scares me is just, what if I do something that people come after me? Like you just, it's kind of a scary landscape out there. You just never know. Anybody who's showing up, I mean, you too, like anybody that's showing up online, you really sort of open yourself up to somebody that could just come at you. And that is scary.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. I feel like when I've written some personal blog entries, and I think number one, it was really hard to just hit click, like publish it, send it out there, because I found myself very worried to peel back. I don't know, for people that didn't really know me to then know me at like a deeper level was very nerve-wracking to me for some reason. And then, definitely the expecting some people to like come at me, and people did come at me.
Yeah.
And it was okay. It kind of just made me feel a little more grounded in what I had to say.
Yeah. Well, and I think, not everybody has to say those vulnerable things out loud. I think, I think it's good to have those safe people, I have people that I can share this vulnerable thing with. So not everybody has to write a book or a blog post that is public.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, we're talking about vulnerability. Maybe I should like hit publish on something. You're like, no, you don't have to. Like if,
Right.
And then just some of us are just a little bit probably, crazy enough to hit publish on a public setting of the things.
You got advice when you would write a lot or speak a lot about your children in podcasts. Someone gave you advice that maybe you should censor how much you share about your children.
Yes.
So they're older now. Have they gone back and listened to any of these earlier Surviving Sarah episodes?
I don't know if I don't think they've fully listened. Rory, she's 13, and she tells me, she's like, I Googled you. She's done that so many times. She'll come up and go, I Googled you. And, but I haven't but it was so true. Like, I started the podcast in 2015, and social media was still sort of becoming, I guess, what it is now. And I don't know, it just seemed like a friendlier place to be. It seemed like, I don't know, my children were so young. I think they were either 3 and 5 or 4 and 6 at the time. So it felt like, oh, I mean, that's so far away. They're not going to whatever. And I don't know, it's now it's going, oh, I always want to paint them, be on. That's the tricky balance for me. How do I be honest, but also what is their story to share, and painting them in a light that they're not going to go like, dang, Mom, why did you say that about me? You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I felt that a lot with the last book because I shared lots of stories about parenting in it. And so, but I worked really hard that they were funny stories, but they weren't like shaming stories on them. So I do feel like I've worked hard to get to that place where they could read it and not be like, oh, Mom.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But
I feel like
scary.
all you have to say now is, that was my truth.
That's right.
Okay?
I'm going to say
that just shuts it down. That shuts it down.
Yeah, I do get, I'm like, maybe I'll just like not have any of these things out in the world when they get old enough. They don't, they don't have time to listen to podcasts. They're still,
That's
13
true.
and 15. And they're like, whatever, I'm not listening to a podcast. So if I condense them onto, TikToks, they would watch it.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move on to where you talk about passion and purpose in your book, and you share this story about, which I could relate so deeply with, in your upbringing and kind of what was popular in our upbringing was this idea of like finding your passion, your purpose-driven life, your that kind of scenario. And as a young adult, you got a job working for the Lookouts, which is a minor league baseball team. And long story short, the job just like wasn't good enough, wasn't your passion and purpose, what you felt it was. And so you quit it because it wasn't that. And then you said, if you could go back and tell your young self one thing, you would say, do you remember what it was?
I don't remember exactly.
Work is work.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was going to be like, this is a job. Sometimes work is work.
Work is work. And I just couldn't agree with that more, because sometimes even your job that you have a lot of passion and purpose, it still feels like work sometimes. Like it's not going to be this like magic thing where you don't feel, I don't really buy into you'll feel like you don't work a day in your life when I think that is a bunch of misleading BS.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Work is work. Like it's, and sometimes I think, and I said this in the book, trying to work in what you're passionate about is such a privileged thing. Sometimes you just got to work because you have to pay bills and you need a job. And you don't always get to work in a field that just brings me so much joy and passion about what I do. Like sometimes it's just, no, I'm actually really good at this, and it pays my bills.
I need to pay my bills. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then in cases like that, I think it's important to find a hobby or find something outside of your work that is kind of fueling a purpose or a passion that you have. But you could find something meaningful to do. That's kind of what I think sometimes for purpose, it is aligned with that word meaningful. And so it's like, I might not be working a job that is meaningful to me outside of that. I really appreciate the money that it brings me, but it's like, you could find that in other areas. You can do that in volunteerism. You can do that in so many ways. And even just like playing sports is meaningful to, there's all these ways that you can feel that sense of purpose outside of your work. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to move on now to another area of the book that I really loved. Because obviously happiness is centered a lot around our faith at times. And I think I have a belief that, faith is very important to finding happiness. But you talk about deconstructing your faith because you, like me, grew up in church. I went to Christian school growing up. You went to Christian school growing up. So you know what that's like, just kind of being infiltrated by the word of God and all these, and so you're not really taught to question anything at that point.
Yeah.
But you had this whole experience of deconstructing your faith. Can you talk about that a little bit, and just how being able to do that, how that has affected your happiness?
Yeah, I think that word deconstruction, I always think about, it can have a negative connotation, I think, with a lot of people, especially people who are really in certain areas of the Christian faith, and they're very threatened, I guess, by that word. I laugh in the book. I even say, I'm like, listen, like, we would not have a Chipotle burrito bowl if someone didn't deconstruct the burrito and they just took it out of the tortilla and started building it in a bowl. And that's essentially what we do when we deconstruct our faith. We just can take it apart and look at the different pieces and see what works and what fits. And, it's really about evolving and growing. And I think for me, being raised in a certain tradition where that word evolve was like, let's don't use that word in any way. But
evolution?
Right. But I don't want to be the same person I am at 45 as I was at 14. Right.
Yeah.
Like I hope that I have grown and evolved in so many areas. And so why don't we hope and think that about our faith as well? However, whatever faith tradition you're set in, we should always be giving our faith room to grow and evolve and to breathe. And the thing that I learned that has brought me so much happiness is that when I began to widen my faith and widen my world, it widened my faith, and that brought a lot of happiness. Because I think when I was looking at the world through this really narrow way, I felt more judgment and I felt more fear. And when I was able to widen it and hold it with a more open hand and sit in the gray instead of being scared of the gray, and be okay with not knowing and uncertainty instead of having to have a certain answer and a right answer, I just found myself at peace more. I found myself being kind and compassionate and quick to empathy more, and which essentially then I was finding myself more connected to myself in those ways and more connected to others in a real loving way when I was able to take some of those things that I had grew up believing and going, okay, in light of what I know now, I'm in, I probably in my 30s or in my 40s, in light of what I know now, does this still hold up? Is this true? And that really did bring me a lot of peace by going down that deconstruction path and just taking it apart, just like you would a burrito, to create that perfect bowl that you want to have.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say even for me, I had never used that word before, but that's essentially, I think, what I did when I was in college, when I really started to question, why do I believe this? And I took a religions class, and it just really challenged me to deconstruct my faith and to really figure it out myself, and what do I believe and why do I believe it? And it, if anything, for me, it made my faith even stronger. It might look a different way, but it's way more rooted and stronger, and definitely makes me happier.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, I know I just said it, but it's like, what is the evidence of what you believe in your faith is how you treat other people and how you treat yourself. So with whatever you're questioning, whatever you land on the other side of those questions, if it was making you treat others better and
Yeah.
treat yourself better, then you're in a good place. Like those questions helped you get to a better place. That wasn't something that, if those questions and you're like, gosh, now I'm like, flipping everybody off all the time and like burning their houses down. Okay, like let's don't play with fire. Like, like that might be, but for most people, I don't think that that's what happens. I think when they start to let go, they start to realize that the world is a lot bigger than what they once thought. Again, when they sort of widen their world, they really do widen their faith with it.
Yeah. I agree. So guys, I think, I'm so happy that I could just touch on a few highlights in the book. I think this is such a good read. Something that can be so helpful for all of us struggling with common questions. So I just want to finish, Sarah, with just some fun questions.
Okay.
You have no clue what I'm going to ask, but we want to know the
Before you
answers.
do, although I want to tell people, you are in this book. Like I talk about.
I know. Guys, I'm in the book.
Right. Like me, like writing this book, I was knee deep in so many, like we said in the beginning, raw, vulnerable things. And I found myself in Hannah's studio and just like working my way through things and finding friends and, unexpected places. And so there was so much that you are, I feel like, intimately in these words. So,
well, it's true. It was really fun. I would like read a part in the book and I would be like, oh my gosh, I remember when like Sarah came in and told me that Rory said she didn't use any shampoo, like God knows for how long.
Right.
So it was like really fun. I was like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. And I remember when that happened. And then I was like, my name.
Yep. I know.
So yeah, it was fun. I feel like a little celebrity by way of a celebrity.
That's right. You are. Anybody wants to know Hannah a little bit, you can. The entire book's about Hannah, actually. That's what it's.
Yeah, right. Okay, Sarah.
Yep.
If you could, because you say in the book that you kind of had this dream. Well, I didn't know about the Miss America dream.
Right.
Oh, can we give one spoiler?
Yeah.
About something you say in the book about you have not been crowned queen.
Oh, yes. Turkey bowl queen.
Sarah's family has a big turkey bowl every Thanksgiving, and they crown a queen. Everything. And how many years has this been going on?
Over 20, like 23 years, I think. Yes.
Okay.
And I had never been queen.
Never, which is absurd to me.
Yes.
But when the book was published, you still had never been queen.
Correct.
But what happened this year?
I was crowned your 2023 Turkey Bowl queen, right? And I wore my prom dress.
I was going to say, what year was the dress? 1996 dress to be crowned 2023 queen. I think that's pretty impressive.
I know.
Okay, but you say also in the book that one of your big dreams, aside from being Turkey Bowl queen, is to be like a Regis Philbin type.
Ah, yes.
Interview host. Yes. Good. Yeah. So if you could interview any celebrity today, who would you choose and why?
Well, I would for sure want to interview my Brene Brown. I would love to interview her. Mm-hmm. That would make the world go round. And then I think I have to go Taylor Swift after that. Like if I was but this is just, she's like ruling the world.
I love it. I know she is right now. Whew, love it.
I know.
Love the whole Tay, Kelsey. What are they calling them?
I want to be like, is it real? Just slip me a note, yes or no. Like what's going on?
I think it's 100% real.
I think it is too.
This is so real. She's the little country girl that is
going to marry her little
football.
Every romance novel, literally, I'm like, somebody, did she read a romance novel recently?
I know. Let's just make this happen.
I have read that book. I think it's on my bookshelf. I
know. Okay, here's a tough one. If you had to choose between tennis or pickleball for the rest of your life, which would you choose?
Tennis. Wouldn't even have to question it.
I love you. What would Scott say about that?
He would choose pickleball because he's never played tennis.
So what would he say about you choosing tennis? Because then you couldn't play together.
I would choose tennis. Yeah.
But you can't play together.
I know. He'd have to pick up a new hobby.
Okay, what book have you read lately that brought you a lot of happiness?
Okay, so I just read recently. It's a series, The Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. It's a new series. It's like fantasy, which I've never been a fantasy reader until like last year. But that one brought me a lot of like happiness. It was just fun to escape into a different world. And you're like, oh, this whole different world exists. So I feel like that brought a lot of happiness recently. But I have a long list. I mean, like asking that question, I'm like, we could have another hour-long conversation of all the books.
I know. I'm going to expand on that in a second. Okay. Last question. As of now, which is harder, toddlers or teens?
Teenagers. They're a lot of fun. Like I laugh a lot at Sinclair is about to be 16. So she's kind of come out of the middle school funk. We're still deep in the 8th grade middle school funk right now as well. And that I don't love. I think I would rather have a toddler than 13-year-old. but the almost 16, there's a lot of fun. Like we just laugh a lot. Like you can kind of just be your normal adult self a little bit with her and make jokes and she can like track along with you. And so that's that's the fun part of teenagers, but they always want to talk to me at like 10:30 and I'm like, go away. I've been here all night. Like, I don't want to talk to you at 10:30. Yeah. I'd like to sleep.
Are you ready for bed at 10:30?
Yes, I am. I get so tired.
I'm ready for bed at 9:30. I don't even know how you stay awake till 10:30.
I know.
Sarah, it's been so good to interview you.
Oh, it's been so fun. I miss you. So this was a fun getting to see you.
I know. Well, we're going to get together and play tennis real soon.
Yes.
Guys, you have to sign up for Sarah's newsletter because in it, if you are interested in her favorite reads, not only her favorite reads, but she breaks down her like favorite podcast of the moment, what she's listening to, and then what she's watching, like between Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV.
All the things.
And I love it. I mean, you're basically the only person that I go to try to figure out what my next book is going to be or what next show I'm going to watch.
Good.
So
I love it.
That's why I love your newsletter, hands down. So where can somebody go to sign up for your newsletter?
Just go to sarahbragg.com. That's sarahbragg.com and click Survival Kit. And you can sign up right there.
And then tell people how they can get Is Everyone Happier Than Me?
Yes, you can get it wherever you want to buy books. And look how pretty it is. Isn't it so pretty? It's so pretty.
I'm gonna because there's gonna be an Audible, right?
Yes,
you recorded the Audible.
Yes.
I'm so excited about that. So that I'm waiting for that to come out.
Yes.
Because then I'm gonna listen to it.
Yes. And I mean, genuinely, anywhere you buy books, you can find it. So
awesome. All right, Sarah, such a great time talking to you. Guys, we will see you soon.